Tonight, we drift into a quieter world where a clever hedgehog outruns a haughty hare, where two travelers receive gold or coals from the little folk, and where a master thief performs 3 impossible tasks to win his wager. So close your eyes and let the stories carry you far away into the quiet of the night. The master thief. One day, an old man and his wife were sitting in front of a miserable house, resting a while from their work. Suddenly, a splendid carriage with 4 black horses came driving up, and a richly dressed man descended from it. The peasant stood up, went to the great man, and asked what he wanted, and in what way he could be useful to him. The stranger stretched out his hand to the old man and said, "I want nothing but to enjoy, for once, a country dish. Cook me some potatoes in the way you always have them, and then I will sit down at your table and eat them with pleasure." The peasant smiled and said, "You are a count or a prince, or perhaps even a duke. Noble gentlemen often have such fancies, but you shall have your wish." The wife went into the kitchen and began to wash and rub the potatoes and to make them into balls as they are eaten by the country folks. Whilst she was busy with this work, the peasant said to the stranger, "Come into my garden with me for a while. I have still something to do there." He had some holes in the garden and now wanted to plant some trees in them. "Have you no children?" asked the stranger, "who could help you with your work?" "No," answered the peasant. I had a son, it is true, but it is long since he went out into the world. He was a ne'er-do-well, sharp and knowing, but he would learn nothing and was full of bad tricks. At last, he ran away from me, and since then, I have heard nothing of him. The old man took a young tree, put it in a hole, drove in a post beside it, and when he had shoveled in some earth and had trampled it firmly down, he tied the stem of the tree above, below, and in the middle, fast to the post by a rope of straw. "But tell me," said the stranger, "why you don't tie that crooked, knotted tree which is lying in the corner, there bent down almost to the ground to a post, also that it may grow straight as well as these." The old man smiled and said, "Sir, you speak according to your knowledge. It is easy to see that you are not familiar with gardening. That tree there is old and misshapen. No one can make it straight now. Trees must be trained while they are young." "That is how it was with your son," said the stranger. "If you had trained him while he was still young, he would not have run away. Now he too must have grown hard and misshapen." "Truly, it is a long time since he went away," replied the old man. "He must have changed. "Would you know him again if he were to come to you?" asked the stranger. "Hardly by his face," replied the peasant. "But he has a mark about him, a birthmark on his shoulder that looks like a bean." When he had said that, the stranger pulled off his coat, bared his shoulder, and showed the peasant the bean. "Good God!" cried the old man, "thou art really my son." And love for his child stirred in his heart. "But," he added, "how canst thou be my son? Thou hast become a great lord and livest in wealth and luxury. How hast thou contrived to do that?" "Ah, father," answered the son, "the young tree was bound to no post and has grown crooked. Now it is too old. It will never be straight again. How have I got all that I have become a thief? But do not be alarmed. I am a master thief. For me there are neither locks nor bolts. Whatsoever I desire is mine. Do not imagine that I steal like a common thief. I only take some of the superfluity of the rich. Poor people are safe. I would rather give to them than take anything from them. It is the same with anything which I can have without trouble, cunning, and dexterity. I never touch it." "Alas, my son," said the father, "it still does not please me. A thief is still a thief. I tell thee, it will end badly." He took him to his mother, and when she heard that was her son, she wept for joy. But when he told her that he had become a master thief, 2 streams flowed down over her face. At length she said, "Even if he has become a thief, he is still my son, and my eyes have beheld him once more." They sat down to table, and once again he ate with his parents the wretched food which he had not eaten for so long. The father said, "If our lord, the count up there in the castle, learns who thou art and what trade thou followest, he willn't take thee in his arms and cradle thee in them, as he did when he held thee at the font, but will cause thee to swing from a halter. Be easy, father. He will do me no harm, for I understand my trade. I will go to him myself this very day." When evening drew near, the master thief seated himself in his carriage and drove to the castle. The count received him civilly, for he took him for a distinguished man. When, however, the stranger made himself known, the count turned pale and was quite silent for some time. At length he said, "Thou art my godson, and on that account mercy shall take the place of justice, and I will deal leniently with thee. Since thou pridest thyself on being a master thief, I will put thy art to the proof. But if thou dost not stand the test, thou must marry the rope-maker's daughter, and the croaking of the raven must be thy music on the occasion." "Lord Count," answered the master thief, "think of 3 things as difficult as you like, and if I do not perform your tasks, do with me what you will." The Count reflected for some minutes, and then said, "Well then, in the first place, thou shalt steal the horse. I keep for my own riding out of the stable. In the next, thou shalt steal the sheet from beneath the bodies of my wife and myself when we are asleep, without our observing it, and the wedding ring of my wife as well. Thirdly, and lastly, thou shalt steal away out of the church the parson and clerk. Mark what I am saying, for thy life depends on it." The master thief went to the nearest town. There, he bought the clothes of an old peasant woman and put them on. Then he stained his face brown and painted wrinkles on it as well, so that no one could have recognized him. Then he filled a small cask with old Hungary wine, in which was mixed a powerful sleeping drink. He put the cask in a basket, which he took on his back, and walked with slow and tottering steps to the Count's castle. It was already dark when he arrived. He sat down on a stone in the courtyard and began to cough like an asthmatic old woman, and to rub his hands as if he were cold. In front of the door of the stable, some soldiers were lying round a fire. One of them observed the woman and called out to her, "Come nearer, old mother, and warm thyself beside us. After all, thou hast no bed for the night, and must take one where thou canst find it." The old woman tottered up to them, begged them to lift the basket from her back, and sat down beside them at the fire. "What hast thou got in thy little cask, old lady?" asked one. "A good mouthful of wine," she answered. "I live by trade for money and fair words. I am quite ready to let you have a glass." "Let us have it here, then," said the soldier. And when he had tasted one glass, he said, "When wine is good, I like another glass," and had another poured out for himself, and the rest followed his example. "Hallo, comrades," cried one of them to those who were in the stable. "Here is an old goody who has wine that is as old as herself. Take a draught. It will warm your stomachs far better than our fire." The old woman carried her cask into the stable. One of the soldiers had seated himself on the saddled riding horse. Another held its bridle in his hand. A third had laid hold of its tail. She poured out as much as they wanted until the spring ran dry. It was not long before the bridle fell from the hand of the one, and he fell down and began to snore. The other left hold of the tail, lay down, and snored still louder. The one who was sitting in the saddle did remain sitting, but bent his head almost down to the horse's neck, and slept, and blew with his mouth like the bellows of a forge. The soldiers outside had already been asleep for a long time, and were lying on the ground, motionless. as if dead. When the master thief saw that he had succeeded, he gave the first a rope in his hand instead of the bridle, and the other, who had been holding the tail, a wisp of straw. But what was he to do with the one who was sitting on the horse's back? He did not want to throw him down, for he might have awakened and have uttered a cry. He had a good idea. He unbuckled the girths of the saddle, tied a couple of ropes which were hanging to a ring on the wall, fast to the saddle, and drew the sleeping rider up into the air on it. Then he twisted the rope round the posts and made it fast. He soon unloosed the horse from the chain, but if he had ridden over the stony pavement of the yard, they would have heard the noise in the castle. So he wrapped the horse's hooves in old rags, led him carefully out, leapt upon him, and galloped off. When day broke, the master galloped to the castle on the stolen horse. The count had just got up and was looking out of the window. "Good morning, Sir Count," he cried to him. "Here is the horse which I have got safely out of the stable. Just look how beautifully your soldiers are lying there sleeping. And if you will but go into the stable, you will see how comfortable your watchers have made it for themselves." The count could not help laughing. Then he said, "For once thou hast succeeded, but things won't go so well the second time. And I warn thee that if thou comest before me as a thief, I will handle thee as I would a thief." When the countess went to bed that night, she closed her hand with the wedding ring tightly together, and the count said, "All the doors are locked and bolted. I will keep awake and wait for the thief, but if he gets in by the window, I will shoot him." The master thief, however, went in the dark to the gallows, cut a poor sinner who was hanging there down from the halter, and carried him on his back to the castle. Then he set a ladder up to the bedroom, put the dead body on his shoulders, and began to climb up. When he had got so high that the head of the dead man showed at the window, the count, who was watching in his bed, fired a pistol at him, and immediately the master let the poor sinner fall down and hid himself in one corner. The night was sufficiently lighted by the moon for the master to see distinctly how the count got out of the window, on to the ladder, came down, carried the dead body into the garden, and began to dig a hole in which to lay it. "Now," thought the thief, "the favorable moment has come," stole nimbly out of his corner, and climbed up the ladder straight into the countess's bedroom. "Dear wife," he began in the count's voice, "the thief is dead, but after all, he is my godson, and has been more of a scapegrace than a villain. I will not put him to open shame. Besides, I am sorry for the parents. I will bury him myself before daybreak in the garden, that the thing may not be known. So give me the sheet. I will wrap up the body in it, and bury him as a dog buries things by scratching." The countess gave him the sheet. "I tell you what," continued the thief, "I have a fit of magnanimity on me. Give me the ring, too." The unhappy man risked his life for it, so he may take it with him into his grave. She would not gainsay the count, and although she did it unwillingly, she drew the ring from her finger and gave it to him. The thief made off with both these things and reached home safely before the count in the garden had finished his work of burying. What a long face! The count did pull when the master came next morning and brought him the sheet and the ring. "Art thou a wizard," said he, "who has fetched thee out of the grave in which I myself laid thee and brought thee to life again?" "You did not bury me," said the thief, "but the poor sinner on the gallows." And he told him exactly how everything had happened, and the count was forced to own to him that he was a clever, crafty thief. "But thou hast not reached the end yet," he added. "Thou hast still to perform the third task, and if thou dost not succeed in that, all is of no use." The master smiled and returned no answer. When night had fallen, he went with a long sack on his back, a bundle under his arms, and a lantern in his hand to the village church. In the sack he had some crabs, and in the bundle short wax candles. He sat down in the churchyard, took out a crab, and stuck a wax candle on his back. Then he lighted the little light, put the crab on the ground, and let it creep about. He took a second out of the sack and treated it in the same way, and so on, until the last was out of the sack. Hereupon he put on a long black garment that looked like a monk's cowl, and stuck a gray beard on his chin. When at last he was quite unrecognizable, he took the sack in which the crabs had been, went into the church, and ascended the pulpit. The clock in the tower was just striking 12. When the last stroke had sounded, he cried with a loud and piercing voice, "Hearken, sinful men, the end of all things has come. The last day is at hand. Hearken, hearken. Whosoever wishes to go to heaven with me must creep into the sack. I am Peter, who opens and shuts the gate of heaven. Behold how the dead outside there in the churchyard are wandering about, collecting their bones. Come, come and creep into the sack. The world is about to be destroyed." The cry echoed through the whole village. The parson and clerk, who lived nearest to the church, heard it first, and when they saw the lights which were moving about the churchyard, they observed that something unusual was going on, and went into the church. They listened to the sermon for a while, and then the clerk nudged the parson and said, "It would not be amiss if we were to use the opportunity together, and before the dawning of the last day, find an easy way of getting to heaven." "To tell the truth," answered the parson, That is what I myself have been thinking. So, if you are inclined, we will set out on our way." "Yes," answered the clerk. "But you, the pastor, have the precedence I will follow." So the parson went first and ascended the pulpit, where the master opened his sack. The parson crept in first, and then the clerk. The master immediately tied up the sack tightly, seized it by the middle, and dragged it down the pulpit steps, and whenever the heads of the two fools bumped against the steps, he cried, "We are going over the mountains." Then he drew them through the village in the same way, and when they were passing through puddles, he cried, "Now we are going through wet clouds." And when at last he was dragging them up the steps of the castle, he cried, "Now we are on the steps of heaven, and will soon be in the outer court." When he had got to the top, he pushed the sack into the pigeon house, and when the pigeons fluttered about, he said, "Hark, how glad the angels are, and how they are flapping their wings." Then he bolted the door upon them and went away. Next morning he went to the count and told him that he had performed the third task also, and had carried the parson and clerk out of the church. "Where hast thou left them?" asked the Lord. "They are lying upstairs in a sack in the pigeon house, and imagine that they are in heaven." The count went up himself and convinced himself that the master had told the truth. When he had delivered the parson and clerk from their captivity, he said, "Thou art an arch-thief, and hast won thy wager. For once thou escapest with a whole skin, but see that thou leavest my land, for if ever thou settest foot on it again, thou mayest count on thy elevation to the gallows." The arch-thief took leave of his parents, once more went forth into the wide world, and no one has ever heard of him since. The Nix of the Mill Pond. Once upon a time, there was a miller who lived with his wife in quiet satisfaction. Fortune had smiled on their household. They possessed money, fertile fields, and a sturdy mill whose wheels turned faithfully with the flowing stream. Each passing year seemed to pour new blessings upon them, and their prosperity grew so steadily that neighbors whispered that luck itself must dwell beneath their roof. But happiness, like the river, runs in shifting courses. As suddenly as wealth had blossomed, so too did it wither away. Year by year, the coffers emptied, the land yielded less, and the strong mill fell into disrepair. At length, the miller could scarcely claim the building as his own. He grew weary with care. When he lay upon his bed, after long labor, sleep fled from him, and his heart tossed as restlessly as his body. One morning before even the cock crowed, the miller rose in despair and wandered into the chill dawn air. Perhaps thought that the open fields and the fresh breath of morning might ease the heaviness that crushed his breast. As he stepped across the worn planks of the mill dam, the first pale beam of sunlight broke through the mist. At that very instant, he heard the faint ripple of water behind him. Turning in wonder, he beheld a vision. From the pond arose a woman of surpassing beauty. She lifted herself slowly from the depths, her long hair shining like liquid gold. She drew with gentle hands away from her shoulders. Yet it fell in gleaming waves to veil her fair white form. The miller's heart froze, for he knew her at once. It was the nix of the mill pond, the water spirit, whose home lay beneath those green depths. His feet faltered, not knowing whether to flee or to remain, but the nix raised her sweet voice and called him softly by name. Why dost thou wander so sorrowful in the morning light? At first he could not speak, for fear held him silent. Yet her words were tender, and soon courage stirred in him. Haltingly, he confessed how once he had dwelt in wealth and gladness, but now had fallen into poverty so great that he no longer knew how to provide for his household. Be at peace, answered the nix, her eyes gleaming like moonlit water. I shall make thee richer and happier than ever before. Only promise me one thing. Give me the young thing that has just been born in thy house. The miller's thoughts turned quickly. What else could she mean, said he within himself, but some small creature, a kitten perhaps, or a puppy? Surely no great harm in that. And so, desperate for relief, he swore the promise she demanded. Smiling, the nix sank beneath the pond once more, and the water stilled as though no ripple had ever stirred it. With lighter heart, the miller hastened home, but had scarcely reached the threshold when the maidservant ran out with joyful cries. Rejoice, master, rejoice, a son is born to thee. Then the miller stood as if thunderstruck. In a moment, he saw the cunning trick the nix had known all along of the child, and he had been ensnared by his own careless bargain. With head hanging low, he went to his wife's bedside. She asked in wonder, Why dost thou not rejoice over our fine boy? With bitter sighs, he told her the dreadful promise. What use are riches to me? He moaned, if I am to lose my only child. Yet what can I do now? Neither wife nor kinsfolk, who came to offer congratulations, could find counsel to comfort him. But the promise held true wealth, returned with double force. All that the miller laid his hands upon prospered. His barns filled of their own accord, his cupboards overflowed, and each morning it seemed as if unseen spirits had multiplied his gold in the night. Yet in the midst of his prosperity, his soul was tormented. Whenever he passed the pond, dread seized him, lest the nix rise and claim her debt. He never allowed the boy to wander near the water. Beware, he would cry, touch not the pond, for a hand will rise and drag thee under. Time, however, dulls even sharpest fear. Years rolled by, and the nix did not appear. The child grew to a sturdy youth, strong and clever. At length, he was apprenticed to a huntsman, where he proved so skillful that the lord of the land himself took him into service. In the same village, there lived a maiden of true heart and gentle beauty. The huntsman loved her dearly, and when his lord perceived it, he gifted them a little cottage. There they married, and their days flowed in peace and tender joy. But fate, which slumbers, long awakens at last. One day, the huntsman chased a swift roe from the forest into open fields, and after much pursuit, struck it down. Wishing to cleanse his bloodied hands, he went unsuspecting to the waterside. Alas, the very mill pond his father had so feared. No sooner had he dipped his fingers than the nix arose, smiling sweetly, and wound her dripping arms about him. In an instant, she drew him beneath the waves, which closed and glittered calmly, as though nothing had happened. When evening came, and the huntsman did not return, his wife grew troubled. She sought him in field but found nothing. At last she hastened to the pond, and there discovered his hunting pouch lying on the shore. Then her heart knew the truth. She cried aloud in anguish, wrung her hands, and called his name in vain. The water gave no answer. Only the cold face of the moon gazed back at her. Night after night, she haunted the pond's edge, wandering without rest, sometimes shrieking, sometimes sobbing, until at last exhaustion cast her into deep sleep. Then she dreamed. She climbed through wild crags and thorny thickets, beaten by storm, until she reached a summit where all was bright and calm. Before her lay a flowery meadow and a fair cottage, and at its door sat an old woman with hair like snow, beckoning kindly. When morning dawned, the wife resolved to follow her dream. She climbed the mountain and found all as she had seen. The old woman welcomed her, and hearing her grief, said gently, "Be comforted. I shall help thee. Take this golden comb. When the moon is full, sit by the pond and comb thy hair. With it then lay it down upon the shore. Thou shalt see what happens." The wife obeyed. At moonrise, she combed her dark hair at the shining comb, then set it upon the bank. The water stirred, a wave bore the comb away, and behold, the head of her beloved rose from the depths, gazing at her with sorrowful eyes. But before she could grasp him, Another wave rolled forth and dragged him down again, twice more. The dream led her to the wise woman, who gave her first a golden flute, then a golden spinning wheel. Twice more she obeyed, and twice more her husband rose. First half his body, then at last his whole form. With the wheel's offering, he leapt ashore and clasped her hand. Together they fled, but the pond roared in fury, and a flood pursued them across the land. Death seemed certain. In terror, the woman called upon the old woman for aid, and at once they were changed, she into a toad, he into a frog. Thus the flood could not destroy them, yet it bore them far apart, when at last they regained human shape upon dry land. Each was lost in a strange country, not knowing where the other had been carried. Mountains and valleys divided them. To earn their bread, they both tended sheep for many weary years, hearts heavy with longing. At length, one spring day chance brought their flocks together in a green valley. They did not know each other, yet they rejoiced in companionship, and thereafter met daily. Few words passed between them, but comfort grew in silence. One night, beneath the full moon, the shepherd took from his pocket a flute and played a mournful tune. At its sound, the shepherdess wept bitterly. "Why dost thou weep?" he asked. "Alas," she answered, "this very air I once played beside the pond when the head of my dearest rose from the water." At that moment, his eyes opened as though a veil had been lifted, and he knew her. The moon shone upon his face, and she recognized him also. With cries of joy, they fell into each other's arms, and no one need ask if they were happy ever after. The Hare and the Hedgehog. This story, my dear young folks, seems to be false, but it really is true for my grandfather, from whom I have it used always when relating it to say complacently, "It must be true, my son, or else no one could tell it to you." The story is as follows. One Sunday morning, about harvest time, just as the buckwheat was in bloom, the sun was shining brightly in heaven. The east wind was blowing warmly over the stubble fields. The larks were singing in the air, the bees buzzing among the buckwheat. The people were all going in their Sunday clothes to church, and all creatures were happy. And the hedgehog was happy too. The hedgehog, however, was standing by his door, with his arms akimbo, enjoying the morning breezes, and slowly trilling a little song to himself, which was neither better nor worse than the songs which hedgehogs are in the habit of singing on a blessed Sunday morning. Whilst he was thus singing half aloud to himself, it suddenly occurred to him that while his wife was washing and drying the children, he might very well take a walk into the field, and see how his turnips were going on. The turnips were, in fact, close beside his house, and he and his family were accustomed to eat them, for which reason he looked upon them as his own. No sooner said than done. The hedgehog shut the house door behind him and took the path to the field. He had not gone very far from home, and was just turning round the slow bush, which stands there outside the field, to go up into the turnip field, when he observed the hare who had gone out on business of the same kind, namely, to visit his cabbages. When the hedgehog caught sight of the hare, he bade him a friendly good morning. But the hare, who was in his own way a distinguished gentleman and frightfully haughty, did not return the hedgehog's greeting, but said to him, assuming at the same time a very contemptuous manner, "How do you happen to be running about here in the field so early in the morning?" "I am taking a walk," said the hedgehog. "A walk," said the hare with a smile. "It seems to me that you might use your legs for a better purpose." This answer made the hedgehog furiously angry, for he can bear anything but an attack on his legs, just because they are crooked by nature. So now the hedgehog said to the hare, "You seem to imagine that you can do more with your legs than I with mine." "That is just what I do think," said the hare. "That can be put to the test," said the hedgehog. "I wager that if we run a race, I will outstrip you." "That is ridiculous. You with your short legs," said the hare. "But for my part, I am willing if you have such a monstrous fancy for it. What shall we wager?" "A golden louis d'or and a bottle of brandy," said the hedgehog. "Done," said the hare. "Shake hands on it, and then we may as well come off at once." "Nay," said the hedgehog, "there is no such great hurry. I am still fasting. I will go home first and have a little breakfast. In half an hour, I will be back again at this place." Hereupon the hedgehog departed, for the hare was quite satisfied with this. On his way, the hedgehog thought to himself, "The hare relies on his long legs, but I will contrive to get the better of him. He may be a great man, but he is a very silly fellow, and he shall pay for what he has said." So when the hedgehog reached home, he said to his wife, "Wife, dress thyself quickly. Thou must go out to the field with me." "What is going on then?" said his wife. "I have made a wager with the hare for a gold louis d'or and a bottle of brandy. I am to run a race with him, and thou must be present." "Good heavens, husband," the wife now cried. "Art thou not right in thy mind? Hast thou completely lost thy wits? What can make thee want to run a race with the hare?" "Hold thy tongue, woman," said the hedgehog. "That is my affair. Don't begin to discuss things which are matters for men. Be off, dress thyself, and come with me." What could the hedgehog's wife do? She was forced to obey him, whether she liked it or not. So when they had set out on their way together, the hedgehog said to his wife, "Now pay attention to what I am going to say. Look you, I will make the long field our race course. The hare shall run in one furrow, and I in another, and we will begin to run from the top. Now all that thou hast to do is to place thyself here below in the furrow. And when the hare arrives at the end of the furrow, on the other side of thee, thou must cry out to him, 'I am here already.'" Then they reached the field, and the hedgehog showed his wife her place, and then walked up the field. When he reached the top, the hare was already there. "Shall we start?" said the hare. "Certainly," said the hedgehog. Then both at once. So saying, each placed himself in his own furrow. The hare counted once, twice, thrice, and away, and went off like a whirlwind down the field. The hedgehog, however, only ran about 3 paces, and then he stooped down in the furrow and stayed quietly where he was. When the hare therefore arrived in full career at the lower end of the field, the hedgehog's wife met him with the cry, "I am here already." The hare was shocked and wondered, not a little, he thought, no other than that it was the hedgehog himself who was calling to him, for the hedgehog's wife looked just like her husband. The hare, however, thought to himself, "That has not been done fairly," and cried, "It must be run again. Let us have it again." And once more he went off like the wind in a storm, so that he seemed to fly. But the hedgehog's wife stayed quietly in her place. So when the hare reached the top of the field, the hedgehog himself cried out to him, "I am here already." The hare, however, quite beside himself with anger, cried, "It must be run again. We must have it again." "All right," answered the hedgehog. "For my part, we'll run as often as you choose." So the hare ran 73 times more, and the hedgehog always held out against him. And every time the hare reached either the top or the bottom, either the hedgehog or his wife said, "I am here already." At the 74th time, however, the hare could no longer reach the end. In the middle of the field, he fell to the ground. Blood streamed out of his mouth, and he lay dead on the spot. But the hedgehog took the louis d'or which he had won, and the bottle of brandy, called his wife out of the furrow, and both went home together in great delight. And if they are not dead, they are living there still. This is how it happened that the hedgehog made the hare run races with him on the Buxtehuder Heath till he died. And since that time, no hare has ever had any fancy for running races with a Buxtehuder hedgehog. The moral of this story, however, is firstly that no one, however great he may be, should permit himself to jest at anyone beneath him, even if he be only a hedgehog. And secondly, It teaches that when a man marries, he should take a wife in his own position, who looks just as he himself looks. So, whosoever is a hedgehog, let him see to it that his wife is a hedgehog also, and so forth. The Little Folks presents Once Upon a Time in Days, when men still wandered far with staff and satchel. There journeyed together a tailor and a goldsmith. They were bound for distant towns, and as the evening sun sank low behind a row of solemn mountains, they grew weary of the stony road and longed for rest. Yet all at once a strange sound drifted across the twilight, faint at first, like the trembling of a harp in the wind, then fuller, like flutes and pipes answering each other from unseen hills. The travelers stood still and listened. The music was unlike any they had heard, neither wholly of men nor wholly of heaven. It was wild, sweet, and beckoning. Their hearts leapt, and they forgot hunger, thirst, and tired feet. Forward, cried the goldsmith, whose back was bent with a hump, yet whose courage was straight as an oak. The tailor hesitated, for he was timid and small, but curiosity tugged him after his friend. So they pressed on until the round moon climbed above the ridges and poured silver light into the valley. Then they beheld a wondrous sight. Upon a hilltop stood a merry throng of little folk, men and women, scarce higher than a child's knee, hand in hand, spinning and leaping in a great circle. Their faces shone with laughter, and their voices sang a tune more enchanting than the pipes of shepherds. At the center of the dance sat one who was taller than the rest, though still no higher than a man's waist. His coat was woven of many colors, red and green, and golden threads shimmering in the moonlight. From his chin flowed an iron-gray beard that covered his breast. He struck the ground with his staff in time to the song, and his eyes gleamed keen as flints. The tailor and the goldsmith stood rooted astonished. The old man saw them and beckoned with a long finger. The circle of dancers opened at once, as though by magic. "Come in, strangers," the gesture seemed to say. The hunchback goldsmith stepped boldly. First, for bravery often hides beneath crooked shapes. The tailor lingered behind his knees, trembling. But when he saw how light-hearted the dance was, he mastered his fear and slipped inside. The ring closed again, and the dance whirled faster. The little people bounded and sang, their feet scarcely touching the earth. The tailor gasped for breath, but the goldsmith laughed aloud. Meanwhile, the old man drew from his girdle a knife, lamau and sharp. He whetted it on a stone until it hissed. The two travelers turned pale, believing their last hour was come. Before they could flee, the old man seized the goldsmith, set him upon a stool, and swift as lightning shaved the hair clean from his head and beard. The same fate befell the trembling tailor, yet when the deed was done, their terror melted away. The old man clapped them both on the shoulders with a kindly nod, as though praising their obedience. Then he pointed towards a heap of black coals lying nearby. By signs, he bade them fill their pockets. They obeyed, though they wondered what profit lay in carrying such burdens. When their pockets bulged, the circle opened once more, and they were thrust gently out upon the hillside. At that very moment, the monastery clock in the valley tolled midnight, and lo, the music ceased, the dancers vanished, the hill grew silent, and only the pale moon kept watch. The tailor and the goldsmith stumbled down into the valley and found shelter at an inn. Too weary to empty their pockets, they lay down upon straw beds, drawing their coats about them. Heavy sleep fell over them. Yet ere dawn broke, they awoke groaning, for their limbs were pressed as if by stones. Putting their hands into their pockets, they drew forth not coals, but bright pieces of purest gold, heavy and glittering. Great was their joy, and greater still when they found their hair and beards grown again, thick and sound as before. Now they were rich men. The tailor, content with what Providence had given, said, "I shall be a master in my craft, marry my dear sweetheart, and live happily all my days. I need no more." But the goldsmith's greedy heart was not satisfied. Because he had filled his pockets deeper, he now had twice the treasure of the tailor, and yet he longed for more. "Let us go again tonight," he urged, "and fetch still greater riches. Why should we leave such bounty untaken?" But the tailor shook his head. "Enough is enough. A man who has bread should not grasp for another loaf while it is still warm in his hand. I will be content." Yet to please his comrade, he lingered one more day. At nightfall, the goldsmith slung 2 great bags across his shoulders, for his greed was bottomless. Once more he climbed the moonlit hill and found the little folk dancing. The old man shaving his head as before, and the heap of coals lying dark at the side. Without hesitation, he crammed the bags till they could hold no more. His heart leapt at the thought of the mountains of gold he would pour forth come morning. He returned to the inn, lay down, and laughed to himself. "Even if the gold weighs heavy, gladly will I bear it," he whispered. With these sweet hopes, he closed his eyes. But when the cock crowed and dawn crept into the room, the goldsmith sprang up, plunged his hands into the bags, and drew out black coals, nothing else. Again and again he groped, but there was no gleam of gold. No matter, thought the treasure I gained last night is still mine. He ran to the chest where he had hidden it, opened the lid, and woe upon woe found only black coal within. His joy turned to ashes. He struck his brow with his dusty hand, and then felt his head bare and smooth, his beard gone forever. Worse still, where his hump had long bent his back, another now grew before him upon his chest, so that he was doubled with misery. Then he knew the punishment of greed. Bitterly he wept. The good tailor, awakened by his cries, came to him and said kindly, "Be not cast down, comrade. Thou hast journeyed with me, and I will not forsake thee now. Share what is mine, and live with me." Thus the tailor kept his word and gave him shelter. Yet the poor goldsmith bore his 2 humps until the end of his days, hiding his bald head beneath a cap, a sad warning to all who would heap up treasure beyond their need. Eve's various children, when Adam and Eve were driven forth from the gates of paradise, the flaming sword of the cherubim flashing behind them, they wandered sorrowfully until they came to a barren and stony place where no tree bore fruit, and the earth yielded nothing save thorns and thistles. There they were compelled to build for themselves a poor dwelling, and to earn their bread in the sweat of their brow. Adam strong, though wearied, dug into the stubborn ground with his spade, breaking clods from sunrise until nightfall, while Eve sat spinning flax with patient hands, her heart heavy with memory of the lost garden. Each year as time passed, on Eve brought forth a child into the world. Yet the children were not alike. Some were comely and fair to behold, with bright eyes and golden hair, their faces shining with gentleness and grace. But others were misshapen and rough, with crooked limbs, darkened skin, and features that seemed harsh to look upon. Still Eve loved them all, for each was the fruit of her travail, though her heart at times leaned more tenderly toward the fair than the homely. Now, after many years had gone by, the Lord God, who is merciful and just, sent an angel to them with a message. "Prepare thy house for the heavenly Father. Himself will come down to behold how thou livest, and how thou carest for the offspring given thee." At these words, Eve's heart leapt with joy. "What grace is this, that the Lord of heaven will enter beneath my roof," she cried. Straightway she began to cleanse her poor cottage. With untiring hands she swept and scrubbed every corner, decked the walls with meadow flowers, and strewed reeds freshly cut upon the floor, so that the place might appear sweet and fair. Then she called in her children, but only those that were beautiful in form and face. These she bathed in clear water, until their skin shone, combed their hair, until it glistened like silk and clothed them in clean raiment. She taught them how to stand before the Lord with quiet and modest bearing, to bow low, to stretch forth their hands humbly, and to answer with words soft and sensible. But as for the children who were ugly and rough, she would not suffer them to be seen. One she thrust beneath the hay in the shed. Another she drove up into the rafters. A third she hid in the straw. A fourth she shut in the stove. A fifth she sent down into the cellar. A sixth she thrust beneath a tub. A seventh beneath the wine cask. An eighth she wrapped under an old fur cloak. The ninth and 10th she concealed beneath the coarse cloth out of which she was wont to fashion garments. And the 11th and 12th she pushed under the leather from which Adam cut their shoes. Thus she thought to keep them far from the sight of the Lord, lest his eyes should fall harshly upon them. Scarcely was all prepared when there came a knock at the door, solemn and strong. Adam looked through a crack, and when he beheld who stood without, he trembled, for it was the Lord himself. With reverence, Adam opened the door wide, and the Heavenly Father entered. There in a row stood the fair children, washed and shining, bowing before him, stretching forth their hands and kneeling low upon the floor. The Lord smiled gently and laid his hand upon the first, saying, "Thou shalt be a mighty king." To the second he said, "Thou shalt be a prince." To the third, "Thou a count." To the fourth, "Thou a knight." To the fifth, "Thou a nobleman." To the sixth, "Thou a burgher." To the seventh, "Thou a merchant." To the eighth, "Thou a man learned in wisdom." And with each word he poured rich blessings upon them, so that they were filled with honor. When Eve beheld how mild and gracious was the Lord, she said within herself, "Surely his mercy is great. Perhaps he will also look kindly on those poor little ones whom I have hidden away." So she hastened and brought them forth, one after another, from their hiding places, out of the hay, the straw, the stove, the cellar, the cask, the cloak, the cloth, and the leather. At last, the whole rude, dirty, sooty, and ragged company stood before the Lord. Then the Heavenly Father looked on them also with a smile, for his heart is full of compassion. He laid his hand on the first and said, "Thou shalt be a peasant to till the ground." To the second, "Thou a fisherman, casting thy nets upon the waters." To the third, "Thou a smith, striking iron upon the anvil." To the fourth, "Thou a tanner, making leather from hide." To the fifth, "Thou a weaver, spinning cloth upon the loom." To the sixth, "Thou a shoemaker, shaping souls for the feet of men. To the 7th, thou a tailor, cutting garments for all folk. To the 8th, thou a potter, forming vessels of clay. To the 9th, thou a wagoner, guiding beasts and cart. To the 10th, thou a sailor, voyaging upon the seas. To the 11th, thou an errand boy, running hither and thither. And to the 12th he said, thou shalt be a scullion, serving in the kitchen all thy days. When Eve heard these words, she was troubled in her heart. And she said, Lord, how unequally dost thou divide thy gifts? For after all, they are all my children, whom I bore in pain and sorrow. Should not thy favor be given alike to each? But the Lord answered with wisdom, Eve, thou art blinded by thy mother's love. It is needful that the whole world be furnished from thy offspring. If all were princes and lords, who then should plow the field, thresh the grain, grind the meal, and bake the bread, who should forge the iron, weave, the cloth shape, the shoes, and build the houses, who should sail the seas, carry burdens, and labor with his hands. Each shall have his place and calling, so that one may uphold another, and all together be fed, even as the limbs of one body minister each to the other. Then Eve bowed her head humbly and answered, Ah, Lord, forgive my foolish speech. Thy wisdom is higher than my thoughts. Do with my children according to thy holy will. And the Lord departed, leaving peace upon the house of Adam and Eve. And from that day forth, the children of men were divided into high and low, mighty and humble, yet each needful to the other, that the earth might be filled and all mankind sustained. Death's messengers in the days of old, when the earth was young, and men had not yet filled all its fields and valleys, there walked a giant upon a broad highway. His steps were long, his shadow vast, and all creatures fled before him, for he was mighty and terrible to behold. His stride shook the ground, and the trees bent as he passed. But as he went his way, suddenly there sprang up before him a man unknown and small in stature, who lifted his hand and cried in a clear voice, Halt! Not one step farther. The giant laughed so loud that the hills echoed. What is this? He roared. A creature no larger than a twig dares to bar my road. With but 2 fingers, I could crush thee into dust. Who art thou, that thou darest speak so boldly? I am Death, answered the stranger, and his voice was as cold as the grave. No one resists me. Kings bow their crowned heads, peasants drop their sickles, children leave their play, and maidens their song when I command. Thou also must obey me. But the giant, whose pride was greater than his wisdom would not submit. Thou thinkest to rule over all, not over me, he said, and with that he struck at death with his mighty hands. Then began a fierce struggle such as the earth had seldom seen. Death was swift and cunning, but the giant was strong and stubborn. Long they strove together upon the road until the dust rose in clouds and the sky darkened with their struggle. At last the giant dealt Death a blow so heavy that he fell senseless beside a stone, and there he lay, pale and faint, unable to rise. The giant, proud of his victory, strode on with great strides, and thought no more of the matter. But Death lay upon the ground, conquered and weak, and whispered to himself, "What will come of this, if I remain here helpless? No man, no beast, no bird will perish. The world will be filled till no space is left to stand or breathe. The sick will groan forever. The weary will find no rest, and the old will wither, yet not die. O woe unto all creation, if I, Death, lie vanquished." While he lamented, there came along the road a young man, fresh of face, strong of limb, and light of heart. He sang a song as he walked, and his eyes glanced cheerfully to the fields and sky. When he beheld the faint figure lying by the stone, pity seized him. He bent down, raised the fallen one, and held his flask to his lips that he might drink and be strengthened. Gently, he waited till the stranger gathered his breath again. Then Death lifted his head and said, "Dost thou know whom thou hast aided? Dost thou understand who it is that thou hast set upon his feet again?" "No," answered the youth simply. "I know thee not." "I am Death," said the pale one, and his eyes shone with a strange light. "I spare no one. Kings and beggars, young and old, all must follow me when I beckon, nor can I make exception for thee. Yet because thou hast shown me kindness when I lay low, I will deal fairly with thee. I promise that I shall not come upon thee unawares as I do with many others. I will send messengers before me, that thou mayest know of my approach." The youth thought to himself, "It is something gained that I shall be warned before my end. For so long I may live merrily and fear nothing." And he went his way, singing more loudly than before, for his heart was light. Thus he lived for a time in joy, thinking not of the pale figure he had helped. But youth and health are flowers that fade quickly. Sicknesses came stealing his strength, and sorrows visited him in the night. Fevers burned in his blood. His head grew dizzy, and sharp pains tormented his limbs. Then he sighed and said, "Surely I shall not die, for death promised his messengers would come first. But I wish these wretched days of suffering were done." When health returned, he forgot his misery and lived again in laughter and song. Yet sickness returned often, and sorrow sat long by his hearth. Still he said, "This is not death, for he has not yet sent his messengers to call me." At last one quiet evening, as he sat alone, someone touched him on the shoulder. He turned, and there stood Death himself, tall and silent, and said, "Follow me, for thy hour is come." The man started back in fear. "How is this? Thou breakest thy word. Didst thou not vow to send me messengers before thy coming? I have seen none." Then Death's face grew stern, and he spoke. Silence. "Have I not sent messenger after messenger to thee? Did not fever smite thee and shake thy frame? Did not dizziness bewilder thy head, and gout seize thy limbs? Did not thine ears ring and sing, and toothache bite cruelly into thy cheeks? Did not thy sight grow dim till the world was darkness before thine eyes? And beyond all these, did not my brother sleep visit thee every night, and lay thee down as one already dead? What are these, if not my faithful heralds?" The man's lips were closed, for he could give no answer. He knew the truth of Death's words, and his heart failed within him. He bowed his head, yielded to his fate, and went away with Death into the shadows from which none return. And thus it is with all men. The messengers of Death go before him, though few take heed, until he himself lays his hand upon their shoulder. Lean Lisa. There once lived a woman named Lisa, and she was leaner than most, for she scarcely allowed herself rest or ease. Unlike lazy Harry, who would sooner sleep upon a bench than raise a hand to labor or fat, Trina, who thought nothing in the world so sweet as to sit at table and eat. Lisa was restless, quick, and sharp of tongue. She believed that nothing should be still. Not the broom, not the pot, not her husband, and certainly not herself. From the first glimmer of dawn until the last light of dusk, she bustled about the cottage. She scoured and scraped and scolded and swept, and when there was nothing left to clean, she scrubbed again, until the very boards seemed worn thin by her zeal. Her hands were rough with ashes, for she used them more than water, and the smell of burnt cinders clung to her hair and gown, as if it were her only garment. Now her husband, Long Lawrence, was a tall, bony fellow, patient by nature, but bent beneath the weight of her demands. Whatever task she laid upon him, he must carry, and she gave him so many that he bore more burdens than an ass loaded with 3 full sacks of grain. Yet all their toil brought little fruit. They had no gold, nor field, nor cow, nor pig, nor even a chicken to boast of. For all her ceaseless labor, Lisa and Lawrence were poor as beggars, and their table remained bare. One night, when the day had wrung them both dry, and even the crickets were weary of chirping, they lay side by side in their bed of straw. Lawrence was heavy with sleep, but Lisa, whose thoughts never rested, turned and twisted and would not be silent. At last she thrust her sharp elbow into her husband's ribs and said, "Lenz, dost thou hear me? I have had a thought that will change our fortune, if thou wilt but listen." Lawrence groaned and pulled the blanket over his head, but she tugged it down again. "Hear me," she insisted. "If I were to find a single florin, and another were given to me, besides, then I would borrow yet a third, and thou thyself shouldst add a fourth. With 4 florins in my hand, I would buy us a young cow." At this, Lawrence stirred, half dreaming, half listening. The picture of a cow grazing in the meadow was sweet to him, for he had long been without fresh milk. "A cow, sayest thou? That is a fair thought. Though I know not where thy florin is to be found, nor whence mine is to come still. If thou canst gather the money, it would please me well. And if the cow should give a calf, then I might drink of the milk and be refreshed." But Lisa's eyes flashed in the dark, and she cried, "Milk for thee? Nay, fool, the calf must have the milk. It must grow strong and fat, and then we shall sell it at a good price. Not a drop is for thee." Lawrence, still mild in temper, answered, "A little milk, wife, would do no harm. Surely there would be enough for us both." "Enough for thee," she snapped. "What knowest thou of cows and calves? Thou wilt drink away the profit and leave me with nothing. Whether it harm or no harm, I tell thee plainly, not a single drop shalt thou taste, even if thou standest upon thy head. For it, dost thou think, because thou art never satisfied? Long, Lawrence, that thou art to swallow the fruit of my cleverness and my labor." Then did Lawrence, wearied of her sharp tongue, speak more sternly, "Peace, woman, or I shall silence thee with a blow upon the mouth." At that, Lisa shrieked, "What dost thou threaten me, thou glutton, thou scoundrel, thou good-for-nothing Harry, lazy as the day is long?" And with that, she stretched forth her withered hands and clutched at his hair, pulling so that he winced. But Lawrence, though slow, was strong. He rose from the bed in anger caught both her thin arms in one of his great hands, and with the other he pressed her head deep into the pillow. And though she scolded and railed and cried out every insult she knew, he held her fast until, worn out by her own fury, she fell asleep at last. Whether she renewed her wrangling the next morning, or whether she slipped out into the lane to seek the florin her fancy had promised her, no one can tell. Some say she still roams with her broom, and her schemes never resting, always planning, forever, dreaming of a cow that was never bought, a calf that was never born, and milk that was never drunk. And thus it is with lean Lisa, who scoured her house to dust, who worked her husband to bone. And yet, for all her restless striving, came to nothing. The ear of corn, in the olden days when the Almighty still walked among men with his own feet upon the soil of the earth. The blessings of the land were greater than tongue can tell. The soil was so rich that a single grain would bring forth hundreds, and the fields waved with ears so heavy that a man could scarce carry but a few in his arms. Then the stalks of corn bore ears from the root all the way up to the very tip, and according to the height of the stalk was also the greatness of the ear. So it was that the land yielded plenty, and men wanted for nothing, if only they gave thanks for the gifts of heaven. But men are fashioned with hearts that change swiftly, and when fortune smiles too generously upon them, they soon forget to honor the hand that gives. Instead of gratitude, there comes carelessness, and instead of reverence, there grows arrogance. They tread lightly upon sacred things, as though they had sprung from their own strength, and not from the mercy of God. It happened once, on a day when the sun shone bright, and the ears of corn glittered like golden spears, that a woman walked along the edge of such a field. By her side ran her small child, full of laughter and heedless play. The ground was soft, for rain had fallen in the night, and little pools of water still lay upon the path. The child, in his frolic, slipped and tumbled into a muddy puddle, so that his frock was dirtied and stained. The mother, vexed, and not thinking what she did, seized a handful of the shining ears of corn, and as though they were no better than rags, she rubbed the garment of the child until the stains were gone. Thus she used the heavenly gift meant for the nourishment of men and beasts for no higher purpose than to wipe away mud. Now, it so happened that the Lord himself came walking down that same way, for in those times he still dwelt among the children of men, and beheld with his own eyes how they lived. When he saw how the woman treated the corn, his countenance grew stern, and he spoke with a voice that rolled like thunder across the plain. From this day forth, shall the stalks of corn bear no more ears from the root to the crown. Men are no longer worthy of so great a blessing. They have forgotten reverence. They have grown proud and careless with the gifts of heaven. Therefore shall the abundance be taken away, and the plenty shall be made small. Those who stood nearby, laborers and wanderers in the field, trembled at the words. Their knees grew weak, and they fell to the ground, for they feared the judgment of the Lord. And they cried out with humble voices, O Lord, though men have sinned and proved unworthy, have mercy upon the innocent creatures of the air. If all the ears be stripped from the stalk, then the birds who live upon thy bounty will surely starve, for they know not how to sow, nor reap, and have none to care for them, save thee alone. Spare, we pray thee, some portion, though small, that the sparrows and larks and all the winged folk may still find their bread. The Lord, who sees all things and knows the sorrow of even the least of his creatures, looked upon them with compassion. He foresaw the hunger of the little birds, how they would search in vain for seeds upon the earth, and he pitied them. So he stayed his wrath, and he spoke again. For the sake of the innocent, I will not utterly destroy the gift. No longer shall the stalks be litten from root to crown, but at the top I will leave ears as a token of my mercy. And so long as men walk the earth, there shall be food enough for bird and beast, though not the overflowing plenty that once was. Thus it came to pass that the ears of corn were shortened, and the earth no longer yielded 400-fold, but only 50 or 60, and oftentimes less. And men learned, though slowly, that blessings despised are blessings lost, and that he who scorns the hand of heaven shall one day feel its withdrawal. Yet the birds who sing each morning and take neither thought for sowing nor reaping still find their portion upon the stalks, for the Lord in his mercy remembered them. And that is why, to this very day, the corn grows only at the tops of the stalks, and why the fields do not give as richly as they did when God still walked openly among men. The peasant and the devil. Once upon a time in a village, hemmed in by dark forests and wide meadows, there lived a peasant of uncommon sharpness. His eyes were keen as a hawk's, and his mind turned quicker than the wheel of a mill stream. Folks in the tavern whispered often of his cunning ways, and it was said that no bargain, however tricky, could ever make a fool of him. Yet of all the tales told about this man, the most wondrous is the one of how he outwitted the devil himself. It happened one autumn evening when the peasant had been laboring in his field from dawn until twilight. His hands were blackened with soil, and his back ached from bending over the stubborn earth. As the sun sank and shadow stretched long, he gathered his tools and prepared to walk home. But lo, in the very heart of his field, he saw a strange glow, a red shimmer, as though a fire smoldered without wood. Startled, he drew nearer, and there before him lay a heap of burning coals. And upon those coals sat a small black figure, twisted of limb, with eyes like embers and horns that curled like a goat's. It was the devil in person, no taller than a child, yet terrible to behold. "By my faith," cried the peasant, forcing courage into his voice, "thou dost indeed sit upon a treasure, a treasure. It is said the little black one with a grin that showed teeth sharp as sickle blades. Beneath me lies more gold and silver than ever thou hast seen in thy days. It is enough to make thee lord of this whole valley." "The treasure lies in my ground," answered the peasant boldly, "and by right it belongs to me." "Thine it shall be," replied the devil, "if only thou wilt grant me my desire. For 2 years give me the half of all that thy field brings forth. Money I have in plenty, but I crave the fruits of the earth, fresh and green, which I cannot fashion in my fiery home." Now the peasant, though poor, was not greedy enough to leap blindly. He stroked his beard and pretended to weigh the matter, but already his mind was spinning with trickery. "So be it," said he at last, "but that no quarrel may arise between us, let us strike the bargain plain. All that grows above the earth shall be thine, and all that swells beneath the soil shall be mine." The devil, believing himself clever, smote his hands together. "Done," he cried, and vanished in a puff of sparks. The peasant went to his hut and laughed until the rafters shook, for he had sown not wheat nor barley, but turnips, thick and heavy. When the season turned and harvest drew near, the devil returned his step, leaving scorched prints upon the soil. He strutted to the field, eager to gather his share, yet found naught but the broad yellow leaves of the turnips, limp and bitter. Meanwhile, the peasant, with great delight, dug up the fat roots that glowed like gold in the setting sun. "Thou hast outwitted me," this once snarled the devil, his tail lashing like a whip. "But next year the bargain shall be reversed. What grows beneath the soil is thine, but what rises above it shall be mine." The peasant bowed with false meekness. "As thou wilt," said he. But in his mind he already laid new plans. When spring came round again, he sowed not turnips, but golden wheat. The stalks grew tall, their heads heavy with grain, swaying like waves in the summer wind. When harvest came, the peasant took his sickle and cut the stalks close to the ground, bundling sheaves until his barn was bursting. The devil, grinning with expectation, strode once more into the field. But lo, there was nothing left for him but the stubble dry and useless, while all the bounty had gone to the peasant's store. At this, the devil shrieked with fury. Flames burst from his nostrils, and the earth cracked beneath his feet. Down into a cleft of the rocks, he leapt howling and vanished into the deep places of the world. The peasant stood laughing over his sheaves, the gold of the wheat gleaming brighter than any coin. Then he took his spade, went to the place where the burning coals had first glowed, and unearthed the devil's treasure. He filled his cart with silver and gold, until the axles groaned and drove it home with a song upon his lips. And so the crafty peasant grew rich beyond measure, while the devil was left tricked and mocked. To this day, when folk speak of cleverness, they say, that is the way to cheat the devil. The nail, once in days, not too near and not too far, there lived a merchant who was well known in many towns for his sharp mind, quick bargaining, and honest weights. He would travel from fair to fair across valleys and rivers, through thick forests and open plains, and wherever he spread out his cloth and displayed his wares, people gathered round. For he dealt not in trifles only, but in sturdy goods, in shining tools, and in silks that shimmered like water at sunset. And so, at the great fair which was held once a year, he prospered more than ever before. From morning until evening, the customers came, and by the time the bells of the town rang the closing hour, his purse bulged with gold and silver. His eyes sparkled, for he thought of his home, of his wife, waiting by the hearth, of his children, who would leap to see the coins he brought, and of the fine supper he might enjoy before night had fallen. When all was sold and the stall was cleared, the merchant packed his trunk with the money, tied it fast upon his horse, and mounted. If fortune is kind, I shall sleep under my own roof tonight, he said, urging his beast along the road. The sun climbed high, and the miles passed swiftly under hoof. At noon, he came to a small town where he watered and fed the horse, and himself took bread and ale in the inn. When he was ready to ride again, the stable boy led the animal forth and said with a bow, "Good sir, a nail is missing in the shoe of the left hind foot." "Let it be missing," replied the merchant, impatient and eager to be gone. "The shoe will hold well enough for the 6 miles that still lie before me. I am in haste." And with that, he tossed the boy a coin, sprang into the saddle, and rode out without another thought. The day wore on the road wound through wood and meadow, and the merchant pressed his horse steadily. By mid-afternoon, he came to another inn, where he thought to give the beast some rest and grain. Again, a stable boy looked over the horse and came into the room with a troubled face. "Sir," said he, "the shoe of the left hind foot is gone entirely. Shall I take him at once to the blacksmith, who can fasten a new one? Let it still be wanting," answered the merchant with a wave of his hand. "It is but 2 miles farther, and my horse can well endure so little. I must not tarry. I long for my bed and my hearth." So he mounted again and set off. But scarcely had the town fallen behind him when the horse began to limp slow at first, then heavy. Soon it stumbled upon the stones. The merchant urged it on, but the stumbling grew worse. Then, with a sharp cry, the beast fell, and the sound of breaking bone was plain. The poor animal lay in the dust, its leg broken beyond all hope of mending. Now the merchant's heart sank, for the horse could go no further, and the trunk of money was heavy as stone. He loosed the straps, lifted the burden upon his own shoulders, and began the weary walk homeward. The sky grew dim, the woods grew dark, the owls called, and the path seemed longer with every step. His back ached beneath the weight, his feet stumbled in the ruts, and many a time he feared that thieves would spring from the shadows to take both trunk and life. Yet he trudged on until at last, very late in the night, he reached his house. His wife ran out with a lantern. His children cried with joy, but he sank upon the bench, groaning. "That unlucky nail has brought me all this disaster." And so it was. For had he taken a moment's patience, had he listened to the stable boys, his horse would have been sound, his journey easy, and his arrival timely. But because he hurried, he found delay. Because he despised a small care, he suffered a great misfortune. Thus the tale is told, and thus the lesson is plain. Hasten, slowly, for a single missing nail may overturn the journey of a day.